The massive crystal dome of Nexus Prime stretched high above the gathered representatives, its translucent walls reflecting the light of 3 different suns. The emergency session had been called with unprecedented urgency, and the tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a plasma blade. Delegates from across the galaxy sat in carefully arranged sections, each species maintaining their traditional hierarchies and protocols. Admiral Kim Tae-ho adjusted his simple navy blue uniform and glanced around the impressive chamber. The Kao Vorthak delegation occupied an entire section, with their towering insect-like forms clicking and chittering among themselves. Their exoskeletons gleamed like polished obsidian, and their compound eyes tracked every movement in the room with predatory precision. Next to them, the Kalarian representatives pulsed with bioluminescent patterns along their serpentine bodies, their living ships visible through the transparent walls as they floated in the void beyond the station. The human section seemed almost modest by comparison. Just 3 individuals sat at a small table, their equipment consisting of nothing more than a few data tablets and a basic communication array. Captain Lee Dahai sat to Kim's right, her fingers occasionally tapping against her tablet as she monitored fleet communications. Lieutenant Park Hyunwoo, their tactical analyst, reviewed star charts with the focused intensity of someone who had spent his entire career studying alien military doctrine. The crystalline Dominion's representative, a being of pure living mineral, chimed like wind through crystal caves as it spoke. The Void Harvesters have consumed the Kepler 442 system completely. Not a single planet remains. Even the asteroid belts have been processed into raw energy. A collective shudder ran through the assembly. The Harvesters were unlike any enemy the galaxy had faced before. They didn't conquer worlds or enslave populations. They simply consumed everything, converting matter directly into energy to fuel their endless expansion. 17 star systems had vanished in the past cycle, each one disappearing as if it had never existed. The Thraxian War Chancellor stood on his 4 powerful legs, his fur bristling with barely contained aggression. My battle fleets stand ready. 47,000 heavy cruisers, each one capable of cracking a moon in half. The Harvesters will taste Thraxian steel. Murmurs of approval echoed through the chamber. The Thraxians were known throughout the galaxy as fierce warriors, their ships built like flying fortresses, with armor thicker than city walls. The Aquatic Federation's representative spoke next, her voice bubbling through the water-filled communication sphere that allowed her to participate. Our deep space leviathans number in the thousands, living creatures bred for war, each one the size of a battleship and far more intelligent than any artificial intelligence. One by one, each species presented their military might. The Mechanical Collective brought forth armies of self-replicating war machines. The Psionic Confederacy offered fleets guided by minds capable of seeing across time and space. The silicon-based hierarchy presented ships carved from single asteroids, weapon systems that could reshape matter at the molecular level. Kim listened quietly as each delegation outlined their forces. Numbers that would have seemed impossible to human ears just a century ago were thrown around casually. Hundreds of thousands of ships, weapons that could destroy planets, armies that spanned multiple star systems. Yet something about their presentations troubled him. For all their impressive technology and vast numbers, these species seemed to approach warfare like a contest of strength rather than a science. When the final delegate finished speaking, the chamber fell silent. All eyes turned to the human section, where Kim slowly stood. His weathered face, marked by decades of service in the depths of space, remained perfectly calm as he walked to the central podium. "The Terran Coalition pledges 12 vessels to this defense effort," he said simply. The silence stretched for exactly 3 heartbeats before the laughter began. It started as a low chuckle from the Vorthak section, their mandibles clicking. In amusement, the sound spread like a wave through the chamber as other species joined in. The Thraxian War Chancellor's bark-like laugh boomed across the dome, while the Kalarians' bioluminescent patterns flickered in what Kim recognized as their version of humor. 12 ships? The Vorthak High Commander's translator rendered his clicking speech into standard galactic. "Honored human, perhaps your message was corrupted during transmission. Surely you meant 12,000. Captain Lee felt her jaw tighten, but years of diplomatic training kept her expression neutral. She had served with Kim through 3 separate conflicts, including the brutal frontier wars where human ingenuity had turned the tide against seemingly impossible odds. She knew that when Kim spoke with that particular tone of quiet confidence, there was always more to the story. The Crystalline Dominion's representative chimed softly, "We appreciate humanity's willingness to contribute, but perhaps your species would better serve in a logistics capacity? Your merchant vessels are quite efficient at supply runs." More laughter rippled through the assembly. The Aquatic Federation delegates' sphere bubbled with what Kim assumed was their version of amusement. "Yes, leave the fighting to those of us who understand true warfare. Humans are better suited for peaceful endeavors." Kim nodded politely, his hands clasped behind his back in a posture that Lee recognized from countless briefings. "We understand your concerns about our fleet size. However, I assure you that our 12 vessels will perform their assigned duties to the fullest extent of their capabilities." The Mechanical Collective's spokesperson, a construct of gleaming metal and pulsing energy, spoke with the emotionless precision of pure logic. "Statistical analysis indicates that 12 vessels represent 0.001% of the total coalition force. Recommendation: assign human units to rearguard communications relay to minimize strategic impact of inevitable losses." Kim's expression never changed, but Lee caught the slight twitch at the corner of his eye that meant he was either very amused or very annoyed. Given the circumstances, she suspected it was both. "We'll take whatever position serves the coalition." "Best," Kim replied diplomatically. "Our primary concern is stopping the harvesters before they can consume any more systems." As the session concluded and delegates began filing out to prepare their fleets, Lee overheard fragments of conversation in a dozen different languages and communication methods. The general consensus seemed to be that humanity's contribution was somewhere between adorable and pointless. Lieutenant Park leaned over to whisper, "Sir, should I inform the fleet about their expectations?" Kim's smile was barely visible, but it was there. "No need, Lieutenant. Our captains know their jobs. Let's just make sure all systems are ready for full deployment." As they walked through the crystal corridors toward their transport, Lee couldn't help but think about the last time someone had underestimated human military capabilities. The Asteroid Mining Consortium had learned that lesson the hard way when their primitive human opponents had turned mining equipment into the most effective siege weapons the galaxy had ever seen. She had a feeling the Void Harvesters were about to receive a similar education. The Kepler Trappist system had become the galaxy's largest military staging ground in recorded history. Ships from 12 different species filled the void between planets, their formations stretching across millions of kilometers of space. The sight was both beautiful and terrifying, like watching storm clouds gather before a hurricane that could reshape entire worlds. Admiral Kim Tae-ho stood on the bridge of Soul's Pride, watching through the main viewport as the alien fleets took their positions. The Vorthak Empire's dreadnoughts looked like floating cities, each one bristling with enough firepower to level a continent. Their dark hulls absorbed light rather than reflecting it, giving them the appearance of moving holes in space itself. Weapons platforms the size of skyscrapers rotated slowly along their sides, tracking potential targets with mechanical precision. The Kalarian bioships were even more impressive in person. These weren't vessels in any traditional sense, but actual, living creatures bred and modified for warfare over thousands of years. Captain Lee Dahai watched through her binoculars as one of the larger specimens flexed its armored hide, revealing rows of organic weapon ports that pulsed with bioluminescent energy. The creature's eyes, each one larger than a human shuttle, tracked the movements of nearby ships with predatory intelligence. "My God," whispered Lieutenant Park Hyun-woo from his position at the tactical station, "that one bioship is larger than our entire fleet combined." The Crystalline Dominion had brought their geometric perfection to the battlefield. Their ships were grown rather than built, formed from living crystal that could reshape itself based on tactical requirements. Kim watched as one of their cruisers transformed from a sleek dart into a bristling weapon platform, crystal spikes emerging from its hull like the spines of some massive sea creature. The Mechanical Collective's contribution looked like something From humanity's worst nightmares about artificial intelligence, perfectly symmetrical cubes and spheres move through space with mechanical precision, their surfaces covered in millions of smaller robotic units that swarmed like metallic insects. Each ship was essentially a mobile factory, capable of building new weapons and even new ships, from raw materials scavenged from destroyed enemies. In the midst of all this overwhelming military might, the 12 human ships looked almost comically small. Soul's Pride and her sister vessels were roughly the size of standard cruisers, with clean lines and minimal external weapons. To any observer, they appeared to be exactly what they seemed, small, lightly armed patrol vessels that belonged nowhere near a battle of this magnitude. Commander Park Ji-woo of the Kalarian Syndicate's flagship Living Thunder couldn't hide his amusement as he reviewed the tactical display. The massive bioship's bridge was actually part of the creature's nervous system, with neural pathways running through the walls like glowing veins. Park stood on a platform that was technically the creature's brainstem, feeling its emotions. Hand instincts flow through his consciousness via the neural link. "Look at the humans," he said to his tactical officer, a fellow Kalarian whose scales shimmered with shared amusement. 12 tiny ships hiding behind the real fleets like scared children. What were they thinking when they volunteered for this? The Vorthak Tactical Coordination Channel crackled with similar sentiments. Sub-Commander Vextar, his mandibles clicking with disdain, reviewed the human fleet positions with obvious contempt. Analysis confirms human vessels lack adequate armor, insufficient weapon systems, and minimal energy signatures. Probability of survival beyond first enemy contact approaches 0. His superior War Commander Thekvol responded with the clicking laugh characteristic of his species. Humans show promise in merchant activities and diplomatic functions, but warfare requires killer instinct. They are too soft, too emotional, too concerned with preserving life rather than taking it efficiently. The conversation was being monitored on 17 different channels by alien commanders who shared similar opinions. The general consensus was that humanity had either grossly overestimated their capabilities or were planning to retreat at the first sign of real danger. Aboard Soul's Pride, Captain Lee sat at her communication station with a slight smile, playing at the corners of her mouth. The universal translator was picking up fragments of alien chatter, and most of it was exactly what she had expected. "Admiral, they're calling us soft again," she reported, not bothering to hide her amusement. "Also, apparently we're emotionally compromised and lacking in tactical awareness." Kim's response was a quiet chuckle as his fingers moved across a control interface that looked nothing like standard ship controls. The panel was covered in symbols and readouts that would have been incomprehensible to most spacefaring species. "Let them think what they want, Captain. It's better this way." Lieutenant Park looked up from his station, where he was monitoring power levels that were fluctuating in patterns no alien engineer would recognize. "Sir, all reality engine systems are showing optimal parameters. The quantum field generators are synchronized across all 12 vessels." "Excellent. What about the physics modification arrays?" "Standing by for activation, Admiral. The other ships report their systems are ready for Protocol 7 implementation." Kim nodded, his expression remaining calm despite the magnitude of what they were preparing. Through the viewport, he could see alien vessels continuing to arrive. The Thraxian war fleets looked like flying fortresses, their hulls covered in enough armor to stop asteroid impacts. The Aquatic Federation's deep space leviathans moved through space like whales through an ocean, their massive forms graceful despite their size. The Psionic Confederacy's ships were harder to look at directly, their hulls seeming to shift and blur as psychic energy warped space around them. Even the silicon-based hierarchy's rock ships were impressive, carved from single asteroids and powered by controlled fusion reactions that burned like tiny stars. Against all this overwhelming display of conventional military might, the human fleet looked insignificant, which was exactly how Kim wanted it. "Captain Lee, begin the final preparation sequence. I want all crews ready for immediate deployment." "Yes, sir. Should I inform the other ships about the alien assessment of our capabilities?" Kim's smile was barely visible, but it carried years of hard-won experience. "No need. Our captains know what they're doing. Besides, underestimation has always been humanity's secret weapon. As he spoke, subtle changes began occurring throughout the human fleet. Energy patterns shifted, quantum fields aligned, and systems came online that existed in no alien database. The 12 ships maintained their humble appearance, but beneath their ordinary-looking hulls, humanity was preparing to demonstrate why they had survived and thrived in a galaxy full of species that should have been able to crush them easily. The void harvesters were coming, and when they arrived, every species in the coalition would learn that humans didn't measure military strength the same way everyone else did. Sometimes the smallest fleet carried the biggest surprises. The fabric of space itself seemed to tear open as the void harvesters emerged from hyperspace. It wasn't like the clean, controlled jump points that civilized species used for travel. Instead, reality writhed and twisted as thousands of nightmarish ships clawed their way into normal space, leaving ripples of distorted energy in their wake. Admiral Kim Tae-ho had seen many enemies in his 30 years of service, but nothing had prepared him for the sight of the harvesters. Each ship was a grotesque fusion of organic tissue and mechanical components, as if someone had tried to build a spacecraft inside a living creature. Pulsing veins ran along their hulls, pumping unknown fluids through systems that defied conventional understanding. Mechanical limbs jutted from organic surfaces, while biological appendages emerged from clearly artificial structures. The largest of the harvester vessels was the size of a small moon, its surface covered in what looked like thousands of hungry mouths. Each opening glowed with the same sickly green energy that had consumed 17 star systems. Smaller ships, though still massive by galactic standards, swarmed around their flagship like antibodies, protecting a diseased organism. "Contact confirmed," Lieutenant Park Hyun-woo reported from his tactical station, his voice tight with controlled fear. "Estimated enemy count is 7,400 vessels of various configurations. Energy signatures are unprecedented." "Sir?" Captain Lee Dae-hai watched her sensor readings with growing alarm. The harvesters weren't just approaching, they were analyzing every ship in the coalition fleet with scanning beams that felt wrong somehow, as if they were being examined by a predator deciding which prey to devour first. The Vorthak High Commanders. Voice boomed across all communication channels, filled with the confidence of a warrior who had never known defeat. "All units, advance and engage. Show these abominations the strength of civilized space." What followed was the most devastating. 17 minutes in recorded galactic history. The Vorthak dreadnoughts, those floating cities of destruction, opened fire first. Their massive plasma cannons unleashed enough energy to crack planets, while their missile arrays launched volleys that could have leveled continents. The weapons struck the harvester ships dead on, creating explosions that lit up the void like newborn stars. For a moment, it seemed like the coalition might actually stand a chance. Then the harvesters began to adapt. The organic components of their ships absorbed the plasma energy, their living tissue actually growing stronger from the bombardment. The mechanical parts reconfigured themselves, armor plating shifting to deflect. Incoming missiles. Within minutes, weapons that should have been devastating were having no effect at all. Commander Park Ji-woo watched in growing horror from the bridge of living thunder as the harvesters returned fire. Their conversion beams were unlike anything in galactic databases, streams of energy that didn't just destroy matter, but transformed it into pure power that fed back into their ships. The first Kalarian bioship to be hit was the Deep Current, a magnificent creature that had served in battles for over 3 centuries. The conversion beam struck its armored hide, and Park watched through the neural link as the ancient warrior began to dissolve from the inside out. Its death screams echoed through the psychic connection shared by all Kalarian crews, a sound of agony that would haunt survivors for the rest of their lives. "No, no, no," Park whispered, as more bioships fell to the harvesters' terrible weapons. These creatures had been bred to regenerate from any damage, to heal wounds that would destroy conventional vessels. But the conversion beams didn't cause damage. They simply made matter cease to exist, leaving nothing behind to heal. The crystalline Dominion's geometric ships tried to adapt by reshaping themselves, their living crystal hulls flowing into new configurations designed to deflect the enemy beams. It didn't matter. The Harvester's weapons worked on principles that ignored physical laws. Crystal, metal, organic tissue, everything was equally vulnerable to conversion. The mechanical collective's response was the most disturbing to watch. Their ships began cannibalizing themselves, smaller units sacrificing themselves to provide spare parts for larger vessels. But even this desperate strategy failed, as the Harvesters demonstrated that they could convert mechanical components just as easily as biological ones. War Commander Thekfol of the Vorthak forces was the first to break. His flagship, the mighty Eternal Conquest, had lost 3/4 of its mass to conversion beams. His clicking mandibles could barely form words as he transmitted the order that would echo through military history. All units, emergency retreat. Repeat, all units fall back to secondary positions. The retreat quickly became a rout. Traxian war fortresses, their armor reduced to Swiss cheese, limped away from the battle line. Aquatic Federation leviathans, their massive forms reduced to skeletal remains, dove for the safety of deeper space. The Psionic Confederacy's vessels simply vanished, their crews using emergency teleportation to escape before their ships could be completely consumed. In 17 minutes, the most powerful military coalition in galactic history had been reduced to scattered refugees fleeing for their lives. Aboard Soul's Pride, the bridge crew watched the chaos unfold with grim determination. Captain Lee's hands moved steadily across her controls as she monitored the retreat of their allies. "Admiral, coalition forces are in full retreat. Enemy vessels are pursuing. Shouldn't we fall back with them?" Kim's expression remained perfectly calm as explosions lit up the space around them. His fingers continued their complex dance across the quantum control interface, systems coming online that no other species had ever seen. "Negative, Captain. All ships maintain position. Begin transmitting the quantum resonance frequency on all subspace bands." Lieutenant Park looked up from his station in amazement. "Sir, the Harvesters are ignoring us completely. They're focused on pursuing the larger fleets." "As expected," Kim replied quietly. "Begin final system checks. I want all reality engines at full power within the next 60 seconds. The 12 human ships held their position as the galaxy's most feared enemy swarmed past them, apparently dismissing the tiny vessels as insignificant. What the Harvesters didn't realize was that those 12 ships were broadcasting a mathematical sequence that would soon rewrite the fundamental laws of physics in their immediate vicinity. The real battle was about to begin, and this time, humanity would show the galaxy what they were truly capable of. Through the viewport, Kim watched as the last of the fleeing alien ships disappeared into hyperspace, leaving only the Harvesters and 12 small human vessels alone in the void. The enemy was about to learn that in warfare, size wasn't everything. Sometimes the most dangerous weapons came in the smallest packages. The Harvester mothership slowly turned its attention toward the 12 human vessels that remained motionless in the void. This massive creature, a grotesque fusion of living tissue and mechanical nightmare, had consumed countless civilizations across the galaxy. Its surface was covered in what looked like thousands of hungry eyes, each one focusing on the tiny ships that dared to remain in its presence. Admiral Kim Tae-ho stood calmly on the bridge of Soul's Pride as the monster approached. Through the main viewport, he could see the organic sections of the Harvester ship pulsing with malevolent life, while mechanical components rotated and shifted like the workings of some impossible machine. The thing was easily the size of Earth's moon, yet it moved through space with the fluid grace of a living predator. "Sir, the lead vessel is charging its primary conversion array," Lieutenant Park Hyun-woo reported, his voice steady despite the fear he must have been feeling. "Energy readings are off the scale. That thing could dissolve a Vorthak dreadnought in seconds." Captain Lee Da-hai watched her sensor displays as the Harvester's conversion beam began to build power. The weapon had already proven it could tear through any known material, converting matter directly into energy that fed the creature's endless hunger. No shield in the galaxy had ever stopped it. "All hands brace for impact," she announced over the ship's communication system. the conversion beam fired with the fury of a dying star, a lance of sickly green energy crackling with the power to unmake reality itself, streaked towards Soul's Pride at the speed of light. Every sensor on every surviving alien ship registered the attack, their crews watching in horrified fascination as the tiny human vessel prepared to be erased from existence. The beam struck something 3 kilometers away from the ship and simply stopped, not deflected, not absorbed. Stopped, as if it had hit an invisible wall that existed in dimensions the harvesters couldn't comprehend. The energy discharge that should have vaporized the human flagship instead spread out in harmless patterns across what appeared to be empty space. Kim's voice cut through the stunned silence on all communication frequencies, broadcast to every surviving vessel within 100 light years. This is Admiral Kim Tae-ho of the Terran Coalition. To all surviving vessels, maintain safe distance and observe. We are engaging the enemy. The 12 human ships suddenly erupted with energy signatures that broke every known law of physics. Their hulls, which had appeared so ordinary and unremarkable, now blazed with power readings that made alien sensors scream warnings about impossible energy levels. Captain Lee's hands moved across her control panel with practiced precision, activating systems that existed in theoretical physics textbooks but had never been successfully weaponized by any known civilization. Reality engine at maximum output. Quantum field generators synchronized across all vessels. We have complete control over local space-time. The first weapon humanity deployed was something no alien species had ever imagined possible. Lee's fingers danced across controls that manipulated the fundamental forces of the universe itself. Gravity bomb deployment in 3, 2, 1. Space twisted in ways that hurt to look at. For exactly 4.7 seconds, a localized black hole materialized in the middle of the Harvester formation. The artificial singularity consumed 3 enemy ships instantly, their biomechanical forms stretched and twisted beyond recognition before disappearing forever. The gravitational shockwaves crippled a dozen more vessels, their organic components rupturing under forces that could crack planets. The Harvester fleet, which had maintained perfect formation through countless battles across the galaxy, suddenly wavered in confusion. These creatures had adapted to every weapon they had ever encountered, but they had no response to attacks that violated the basic laws of reality. Quantum Disruptor Array. Target the secondary cluster, Kim ordered, his voice as calm as if he were discussing the weather. Lee activated the second weapon system, and reality itself began to unravel in targeted areas. The quantum disruptors didn't destroy the Harvester ships in any conventional sense. Instead, they simply convinced the universe that those ships had never existed in the first place. Matter didn't explode or burn or dissolve. It ceased, leaving behind empty space where nightmarish war machines had been moments before. Even more disturbing was what happened to the crews. The biomechanical entities that piloted the Harvester vessels didn't die when their ships were quantum disrupted. They experienced something far worse. They were erased from the timeline itself, as if they had never been born. Temporal minds. Activate dispersal pattern, Charlie, Kim continued, methodically working through humanity's arsenal of impossible weapons. The third weapon was perhaps the cruelest. Temporal minds created localized time loops, trapping entire squadrons of enemy vessels in endless repetition. The affected Harvester ships found themselves reliving the same 3 seconds of existence over and over again, their crews fully aware of their situation, but completely powerless to escape. Lieutenant Park watched his displays in amazement as the mathematical sequences being broadcast by all 12 human ships intensified. Sir, we're rewriting the fundamental constants of physics in a sphere roughly 10 light minutes in diameter. Local space-time is completely under our control. What the fleeing alien fleets couldn't understand was that humanity had taken a completely different approach to warfare. While other species built bigger guns and thicker armor, humans had spent centuries learning to weaponize the universe itself. Every law of physics, every fundamental force, every basic principle of reality, all of it could be turned into a weapon if you understood it well enough. The Harvester mothership, that moon-sized horror that had terrorized the galaxy, suddenly found itself facing an enemy that fought with controlled black holes, quantum uncertainty, and the manipulation of time itself. Its conversion beams, so deadly against conventional matter, were useless against foes who could simply edit themselves out of the beam's path through space-time manipulation. Kim watched as the enemy formation continued to collapse under the assault of weapons that shouldn't have been possible. Captain Lee, prepare the reality engine for maximum output. It's time to show them what humans are truly capable of. The 12 ships of the Terran Coalition blazed like newborn stars as they demonstrated that in warfare, imagination was far more dangerous than raw firepower. The impossible happened in the depths of space that day. For the first time in their 1,000-year reign of terror, the Void Harvesters faced an enemy they couldn't adapt to, couldn't consume, and couldn't understand. Their biomechanical forms, perfected through countless battles and designed to evolve against any threat, found themselves helpless against weapons that operated outside the normal rules of reality. The Harvester mothership, that moon-sized nightmare that had devoured entire star systems, began to shudder as temporal mines exploded around it in dimensions it couldn't perceive. Its organic components, bred to regenerate from any damage, couldn't heal wounds that existed in multiple timelines simultaneously. The mechanical parts of its hybrid structure sparked and failed as quantum disruptors convinced them they were made of materials that couldn't exist. Captain Lee Da-hai watched her sensor displays with a mixture of awe and satisfaction as the enemy formation completely collapsed. Admiral, I'm reading massive energy fluctuations from the Harvester fleet. They're actually retreating. The word retreat felt strange when applied to the Void Harvesters. These creatures had never withdrawn from a battle in recorded galactic history. They consumed everything in their path or died trying. The concept of tactical withdrawal was as foreign to them as mercy or compassion. But here they were, the survivors of their once mighty fleet, desperately clawing their way back toward hyperspace as reality continued to bend and twist around the 12 human vessels. The Harvesters that had been caught in time loops were left behind, still trapped in their endless 3-second cycles. Those affected by quantum disruption were simply gone, erased so completely that even their energy signatures had been deleted from existence. Admiral Kim Tae-ho stood on the bridge of Seoul's Pride, watching through the main viewport as the enemy fled. The mathematical sequences being broadcast by his fleet were winding down now, allowing local space-time to return to its normal configuration. The invisible barriers that had stopped the Harvester conversion beams flickered and faded as the reality engines powered down to standby levels. All human vessels report minimal damage, Lieutenant Park Hyun-woo announced from his station. Minor stress fractures on 3 ships from the reality manipulation, but nothing that affects combat capability. Our casualties are 0, sir. Kim nodded, his expression remaining carefully neutral despite the magnitude of what they had just accomplished. Signal the Coalition survivors. Inform them that the system is secure and the immediate threat has been neutralized. The transmission went out on all frequencies, reaching the scattered remnants of what had been the galaxy's most powerful military coalition. On dozens of different ships in languages spanning half the known galaxy, the same message was received: the humans had won. Across the void, stunned silence filled every surviving bridge. Commander Park Ji-woo sat in the neural interface of living thunder, feeling the bioship's confusion and fear through their psychic connection. The massive creature had witnessed the destruction of dozens of its kindred, seen them dissolved by weapons that turned matter into nothingness. Now it trembled in space, its bioluminescent patterns flickering with emotions it had no words for. How, was all Park could manage to whisper. How did they do that? The Vorthak High Commander's flagship, Eternal Conquest, drifted nearby with 3/4 of its hull missing from Harvester conversion beams. War Commander Thekvol stared at his tactical display, his compound eyes unable to process what they were showing him. 12 small human ships floated serenely in the center of a debris field that stretched for millions of kilometers. The wreckage of thousands of Harvester vessels drifted around them like fallen leaves. Impossible, he clicked to his tactical officer. Our sensors detected no weapons of conventional design, no particle beams, no missile launches, no energy. Discharges that match any known technology. How did they destroy an entire harvester fleet? The Crystalline Dominion's representative ship had reformed itself into a perfect sphere, its living crystal hull pulsing with patterns that indicated deep confusion. The being within had witnessed the humans manipulate gravity itself, had seen them create and control black holes as if they were everyday tools. Such power should have required installations the size of planets, not 12 small warships. The mechanical collective's surviving units were running continuous analysis algorithms, their artificial intelligences desperately trying to understand what they had observed. But their programming, based on logical principles and known physics, couldn't process weapons that operated by rewriting the fundamental laws of the universe. Admiral Kim's final transmission cut through the chaos and confusion like a blade through silk. His calm professional voice reached every surviving vessel in the system. To the Galactic Council and all coalition forces, the Terran Coalition considers this engagement a successful field test of our defensive capabilities. The Void Harvester threat to this system has been neutralized. We look forward to continued cooperation in maintaining galactic security. The transmission ended, leaving thousands of alien warriors to contemplate a reality that had shifted beneath their feet. Everything they thought they knew about warfare, about power, about humanity itself had been turned upside down in the span of an hour. On the Thraxian battlecruiser, Steel Fang, Captain Yon Su Jin of the Diplomatic Corps finally found her voice. She had been aboard as a liaison officer, never expecting to witness actual combat. Did the humans just save the entire galaxy? Her Thraxian counterpart could only growl in response, his warrior's pride warring with grudging respect. The species he had dismissed as soft merchants had just accomplished what the combined might of 12 galactic civilizations could not. As the human fleet began to power down their reality-bending weapons, Captain Lee couldn't help but smile. At her console, the energy readings were returning to normal levels, though normal was a relative term when dealing with technology that could rewrite physics on command. "Think they'll still laugh at our small fleet, sir?" she asked, unable to keep the satisfaction out of her voice. Admiral Kim's expression remained professionally neutral, but Lee had worked with him long enough to see the quiet satisfaction in his eyes. "I doubt they'll be laughing at anything human for quite some time, Captain. In fact, I suspect we're about to receive a great many requests for technological cooperation." The 12 ships of the Terran Coalition began their journey home, their hulls once again appearing as ordinary and unremarkable as when they had first arrived. Behind them, they left a debris field that would become a monument to the day the Galaxy learned that humanity didn't measure military strength in ship counts or weapon sizes. They measured it in understanding of the universe so complete that reality itself became their weapon. The Void Harvesters were gone, fleeing to whatever dark corner of space they had emerged from, and every surviving member of the Galactic Coalition carried with them the knowledge that the small, quiet species from the third planet of an unremarkable star system had just redefined what it meant to be powerful. The age of underestimating humanity was over. The end.